Hello, everybody. Very, very quick intro. I'm Tim, co-founder and co-CEO of Friendsurance. As we just heard in the intro, we are sort of the operating system for insurance distribution, coming from a legacy of innovation, first in B2C, where we pride ourselves of being the first ones who introduced a peer-to-peer concept to the insurance world. We were an insurtech before that term existed. We've been in the market for almost 10 years. And in the recent past have leveraged everything that we built up into partnerships with big corporates, with big partners, where we try to bring two worlds together technologically. Big insurers with their products on the one hand, big distribution partners, especially banks on the other hand, to weave that together on a platform and make it into a completely new experience for the end customer, as an intro.
Shivaji here. I represent Deutsche Bank, the retail pillar of Deutsche Bank, and I'm responsible for the data topics covering from data strategy, architecture, and moving towards also the analytics, AI use cases for more customer-oriented and customer service convenience use cases. The topics that we'll talk about today, and maybe the segue into the presentation, what we thought about is interesting, not about only the cooperation that we have or that we are working towards, but more towards what does it mean in terms of the platform economy, a term which you guys must have heard a couple of times at least, and what does it mean for the data? That's another topic which is very hot right now. Everybody's talking about it. How do we bring the world of data to the world of platform economy? And with that, probably we just start. So the first thing, maybe just to set the stage, that we are all talking about the same terminologies. What is a platform economy? We've taken an example which is not in the financial world, but if we start talking about CNA, in a pipeline world or in the world that existed so far, most companies produced their own products and supplied it to the customers and maintained the entire value chain for themselves. That's what we call, or that's what's called the pipeline economy. Now, coming to the right side of the slide, that's the more platform economy. What you see is where companies basically cater products produced by others to the customers, giving them the platform or the channel to the customers. What's important is that both these economies or models require a very clean and coherent data platform or a data strategy. On the left side, the focus is more on structured data, or was more on structured data, with terminologies which you guys must have heard: data warehouse, data storage elements. The more you come towards the platform economy, you're talking about real-time interactions, you're talking about unstructured data, and also more stuff like data lakes. Based on that, what we have created at Deutsche Bank is a very clear strategy where we have said we'll move from the left side towards the right side when we are moving towards the platform economy or platform provider setup. All these levels are important. The first one being fulfilling the regulatory requirements of data. And I think all of you, regardless if you're within the financial community or providers of the financial community, I think agree that the regulatory requirements on data are massive for the financial segment and they need to be fulfilled. Built up on that, we have multiple channels with which we interact with our customers, keeping the data on these channels clean and coherent so that we can approach the customers and segment the customers so that we can provide them individualized offerings is the next step. State of the art, level 3, that's where we start mixing the channels and putting the data across all these channels together so that we have a coherent offering towards the customer as a whole. When you start talking about platform, That's when you move towards level 4 and level 5, where you're bringing in the data from external sources outside your own company. In level 4, only on a transactional basis. In a level 5, more towards a real-time streaming, where you are offering real-time products in need of the customer. And now coming back to reality, what does that mean for our cooperation?
Exactly. So what we're doing, we're Deutsche Bank and Friendsurance together. Is the mic on? I was gonna pretend I have an opera training, but I don't, so with the mic it's better.
Shout.
So what we're doing, Deutsche Bank and Friendsurance together, is indeed applying that in reality with the DB Insurance Manager, right? So again, to take it indeed to reality, what does that DB Insurance Manager do? What problem does it solve? Pretty simple. People have no clue about insurance. There's no orientation. What do I have to start with? What insurance do I have? I usually have to go to my cupboard, to my shelf, and get 3 physical folders of paper out and browse through them to kind of understand that. So we take that from the bank accounts and other sources to find out what you actually have. Then what do you need? What is your personal situation? Usually in Germany and almost any other market, you will visit a broker or an agent at some point in your life. You'll buy a couple of policies. You put them in that cupboard. You'll forget about them. 10 years later, you've moved twice. You've married twice. You've changed jobs and whatnot. And so that has changed your risk profile, obviously. So you have a different insurance need, but probably you have not visited your agent or your broker on a yearly basis or even more often, and he has not visited you, so that's all outdated. So what you have, you don't really know what you need, you have no clue, and then bringing that together obviously is quite difficult. So that's the issue that we solve with a number of features. You can see that there, right? So first of all, I get an overview. Then I kind of get to understand what I need. We do that digitally. We do it in a multi-channel approach, so you can also talk to actual people who will see that data and guide you through it. We help you with the claims. I mean, that's where insurance, that's the reason to exist for insurance in the end. And then based on your hopefully now better understanding of what you have and what you need, we'll help you optimize and buy new insurance. So that in a nutshell is what we do. Do you have the clicker? And we do that together. So this is something where, this is the DB Insurance Manager is not the Friendsurance Insurance Manager. We are, however, the provider for the tech, the back office operations, and also the insurance advice. And coming back to the platform approach, there's a lot of data that can flow together and that indeed we use here. That partially comes from Deutsche Bank, for example, the bank transaction data and the core bank master data, and partially comes from us or sources that we pull, right? So you have insurance policies, you have customer feedback in various ways, you have the bank transactions. That's a hugely rich source of data. I mean, where am I paying my insurance policies? Where am I paying my rent to? When have I purchased the last smartphone or other things that need insurance, stuff like that. Behavioral data, so have I maybe browsed through the page that deals with liability insurance or insurance for families, so maybe something is going on. And then again, bank master data. And in insurance, unlike banking, we don't live in this fancy world of PSD2 that provides a regulatory ground for standardized digital exchange of data and information. When we, as a platform, communicate with the insurers in the market, what we get back is at best an email with a PDF attachment, but very often also just paper, right? So talk about unstructured data. It's very unstructured. It's very analog. We have to scan it, OCR it through machine learning, understand what data is on there, extract it, match it against a database, put it into the database, and then make sense of it. So there's a number of data that flows into this in different levels of structuredness from a partner from us, and we use that to kind of create a fingerprint. So coming back to what I just said on the slide before, what do I have, what do I need, and how do we get there? And that then allows us to trigger the next best action, right? So this can be that maybe I have an insurance I shouldn't be having. I don't have the risk anymore, or it's not worth insuring anymore, so let's cancel that. Maybe I have a policy that is simply too expensive, so I switch. maybe I have a policy that was still from the times when I was enjoying my single life, but now I have a wife and a family, so I should probably update my policy. Maybe there's a risk I didn't think of because I now have the children. I should also have a term life insurance. If ever something happens to me, that's really good to have in place. Didn't think of it, I'll buy it. Or, rare occasion, rare case, everything is perfect, I do nothing. That also, of course, has to be allowed, right? And all of these things, we do and trigger with data from different sources and partners. But also the functionalities are to the larger extent provided by us, but also we act as a platform. So sometimes there's certain things that others can do better. For example, reaching out to different bank accounts. There is infrastructure providers in the market that have made sense of the different APIs that the banks provide that we tag on to. Understanding tariffs, insurance tariffs historically and quantitatively. There's databases in the market that can do that even better than we do, so we integrate with them through APIs. So we also use different services. We don't have to build everything ourselves. We shouldn't build everything ourselves. And then together we, then we, with our services, plug into this even bigger platform of Deutsche Bank to provide seamless services to the customers of Deutsche Bank, right? So in the end, really, I go into my bank account. There's a section that says insurance, and the journey starts seamlessly, and I can, from that point on, manage my insurance directly from the bank account.
I think that's a very valid point, right? I mean, if you just think of it, what you said initially, I wouldn't go so far as saying insurance is not so interesting, but I think people just don't interact with insurance on a daily basis.
It's utterly unsexy. That's not a question.
See, that's the difference between the startup talk and the corporate talk. But we'll try to be more diplomatic. And on a bank level, you're interacting almost on a daily basis. And that's why you collect way more behavior data on a customer journey on a daily basis, what you are doing. I mean, this looks all really cool, and this is pretty cool. Looks actually a bit simpler than it is. Why is that? There are certain requirements that we need to fulfill, technically and also regulatory, before we can actually action these. The first one is GDPR. You talked a lot about bringing different sources of data together for the customer, especially the transaction data, behavior data. I think one of the more important, especially if you're starting to think about spot insurances, geolocation data, and these kind of information, nothing new, is covered by GDPR. We have to see what are the requirements that need to be met so that we don't breach GDPR. At the same time, we have to see how can we provide the most convenient product and the best product fit for the customer.
Absolutely.
Any experiences on that?
Well, I think GDPR didn't really shock us because there were certain rules we lived by before. It didn't shock you, but indeed, if you want to work as a, let's say, a younger company with an established like Deutsche Bank, it's not a couple of pages, but it's a couple of catalogs of requirements that you have to adhere to. And that's, first of all, it's a good thing to adhere to if you don't want to go to jail, and who does? But
and 4% of your revenue as fine,
are
right?
at stake, right? So if you don't want to pay too high fines, but also if you want to get the customer's trust long term, it's something you want to be in line with. And so that takes some resources, but in the end, it makes for a better product because the customer will trust it more, he will engage more, and he will ultimately bring you more business.
The second one, and we talked about it quite a bit in detail in the last couple of slides, difference between structured and unstructured data. Just very briefly so that we can understand what's structured and unstructured. Structured is more tabular data, Excel, CSV, or CSV, all these relational kind of data. Unstructured is more pictures, text, speech. From your examples, it's very clear if you want to proceed in this direction, you would have to have a mix of these two. That requires databases, data storage facilities, which have capability to process these, as well as analytic tools, which can process these kind of data. What are you using for that?
Well, we're using all sorts of things. I think the interesting experience is, well, we've built up quite a bit of our own. We're using all sorts of machine learning algorithms in different programming languages to make sense of unstructured data. But there's also tools in the market. We'll get to that in a moment. We use AWS also, so Amazon Web Services. There's a whole suite of things there that you can use to make sense of unstructured data. I think the crucial point then lies in what you do with the data. So interestingly enough, there's a whole lot of data flying around. Everybody wants to collect data. But what good is data if you can't do anything with it? So I think sometimes we over-focus on how much data we can get and where we can get it.
Right.
Rather than also thinking about what use case are we actually solving, right? So what am I going to do with that data? What value does it create? What service does it fuel for our customers? And so I think we have a whole rich set of data, but at the moment, then the next step, or almost the focus for us, is really also working with that data, right?
And which brings us to the main enabler part. That's the cloud. Why we think cloud is a good enabler are basically two points. Number one, the technology that's needed for the structured, unstructured data storage, as well as analytics, as well as production, is already part of these cloud packages which are in the market. Sure, we can build all this up on premises. It just doesn't scale at the cost.
Absolutely.
And the second part that's important are the tools which are integrated within these cloud platforms. You would have to license them singularly if you want to access these kind of analytics. You already mentioned one of the clouds that you're using. Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so yes, we use AWS for ourselves, but for example, also in the project with Deutsche Bank, we pride ourselves, I think that's true, to also be the first project that actually did that.
In AWS, yes.
In AWS with Deutsche Bank, yes, it's then hosted in Frankfurt, so that's important. It's a bit more expensive in the beginning, but it does scale. So I think what people neglect is indeed the whole breadth of things that come with it, where you can deploy a new environment at the push of a button. You can deal with data privacy and protection at the push of a button. You can deal with analytics with data and so forth at the push of a button. So it's an incredibly rich tool, and indeed it does not scale. So there are partners, corporate partners that would like us still to print a CD and bring the software to their local branch. Please don't do that. It will kill the project, right? Yeah, so wrapping up, I think it's a really exciting time to live in, where these things are coming together across the different platforms. I think in the end, what really then also matters is it relevant for the customer? This thing will go live very, very soon. There was a study, just to mention it, by Bitkom to see whether people can actually imagine managing insurance from the bank account. Interestingly, it was pretty exactly the same result that we had a year ago with a representative study. About 50% said, without ever having seen that solution, yes, I can imagine that. In certain brackets, especially between 25 and 45, it was even 2/3 of the people who said yes. So I think there's really a lot of relevance. I think banks are an incredibly exciting host for a whole suite of services, and we're very, very excited to see what the future may bring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.